So me and the family just got home from watching Madam Web. I'm going to give you the good and the bad. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Like I said, we just returned from watching Madam Web in the theater. And what I want to do is I want to begin with the positives. Some of you watching this review are probably going to be like, positives? Wait, Coach has positives? Are you serious? Yeah, the movie to begin with was much better than I had even hoped for. Does that mean that it was good? No. Does that mean that it was even marginal or average? I'm not quite certain. But it was certainly better than what I had hoped for based on everybody's titles, what everybody's saying online. The movie is getting destroyed over at Rotten Tomatoes. Well, I've got a little girl and she wanted to go watch it. So we loaded up as a family today, went to the theater, watched the movie, and I got to say, it was much better than I had hoped for. Hey, at the end of the day, it's better than Morbius. Right? For me, starting with Dakota Johnson, the main actress in the movie, the main star, Madam Web, I thought she did a perfectly fine job. I know everybody doesn't feel that way. Some people think that she gave up on the project when they were having to do reshoots and things like that. I couldn't really see it in the movie, and I thought she portrayed the character pretty well. The movie has an $80 million budget, so I'm throwing that in the positives. They didn't spend a fortune on it, in the days of the Hollywood blockbuster, so $80 million budget, not including, the cost of ads, advertisements and things, other things that they have to pay for. So it's got to bring in, over $100 million to at least break even. And, with a $51 million opening weekend, maybe it will be able to do that. I don't know. Whether they break even or not, folks, I will tell you this. We're not getting a sequel. It is not going to happen. They anticipated a sequel. They were wanting a sequel. They told the story in such a way to give us a sequel. Look at the future. Look at what we could do. Look at these young spider women. Never going to happen. With that being said, the three supporting actresses, Sydney Sweeney, Isabela, Merced, and Celeste O'Connor, they were intended to play bumbling teenage idiots, and I gotta hand it to them. It was accomplished, because they certainly were bumbling teenage idiots. Another positive I'll give the movie is as it came to an end, I didn't know whether or not there would be an end credit scene. Spoiler alert, there is no end credit scene, and I gotta hand it to them. Thank you for not putting in an end credit scene, because I missed the days where an end credit scene was only given in a movie that was great. The film is fantastic. There has to be a certain standard of awesomeness to have an end credit scene. There's too many bad movies with an end credit scene, and now all of a sudden, today, end credit scenes are the norm. You just sit there and you just wait, and you wait, and you wait. It was actually a pleasant surprise that they didn't include one, because it wasn't needed. The 2003 setting of the film, they take us back over 20 years ago to a bygone era. You see Blockbuster in the back, the way that people are dressed, the world that they were living in, very much 2003, and that's one thing I thought that the movie did quite well. And the ultimate positive here, the film, in my view, is that it was devoid of any and all messaging or agenda. They weren't trying to cram, any type of political messaging down your throat. Now, some people are going to say, wait a minute, this is an attack on the patriarchy. This is all about women, blah, 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 because it's got all these women in the movie. The man is bad. All the women are good, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you could say that, but this film wasn't an attack on men in any way. It's Madam Web. They're girls. It is what it is. So it was kind of refreshing to see a movie that didn't have all of that in it. And now we move, ladies and gentlemen, to my negatives, beginning with the villain in the movie. The villain's name is Ezekiel. He's played by Tahar Rahim, and he just did not get it done. And some of it wasn't his fault, but still, he did not get it done. As a villain, as an enemy, it just didn't resonate with me. And there's a big reason why for that. There were some things that the story did that just didn't lend itself to the villain having any type of danger. Another negative I'm going to say is that the movie is just a bad idea from the get-go. I can't believe we're living in a time where they actually made a movie about Madam Webb. I mentioned it earlier. I can't believe we're living in a time where they actually made a movie about Michael Morbius. What are we doing? Just give us Spider-Man. DC, just give us Batman. I mean, it's really not that difficult. Quit giving us secondary characters and even a character beyond secondary, not worthy of having a movie. Stick to the main players. Nobody goes and watches the Chicago Bulls to see Steve Kerr. They go to see Michael Jordan, speaking of way back in the day. Another issue that I had with the movie was the sound. ADR, Automated Dialogue Replacement. They took the actor for Ezekiel, Tahar Rahim, and he had to speak all of his dialogue in a soundproof booth, and then they inserted that into the movie. Basically, the movie was dubbed. But when it's him, you can really tell. I mean, he's got this low, grovelly voice. It just didn't quite match up. And I'm going to say this too. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but it definitely hit me, and my daughter noticed it as well. There were some scenes where they made the scene very dark visually, and Ezekiel is on screen, and you hear him talking, but if you look closely, his mouth is not moving. And it just stood out to me like a sore thumb. Not a good look. The audio, the sound on this film was bad. Like every time Ezekiel spoke, I was like, ugh, this is terrible. It sounds awful. It's almost as if like he was recording it driving in his car on the way to work. Like it was just not good. Another one of the negatives that I have here is that there's no tension throughout the film. Maybe some tension in the very, very beginning. You had the very sad moment where Mike Epps' character dies. But after that, when Madam Webb was awarded the special ability of the redo button, something bad happens, redo, no worries, I can fix this. We're going to avoid that. I'm not going to let it happen. When you get that ability, there's no stakes. There's no danger. And if there's no danger, it makes the action hollow. And it actually makes the story hollow. So just because of her ability by itself, the writing team really wasn't able to give us a plot where the stakes were continued or elevated throughout the movie. And that led us to the final culminating sequence. They're fighting against Ezekiel, and not one single time did I feel any type of threat, any type of danger, any type of ratcheted up tension. The stakes weren't high at all. You knew what was going to happen. And if you've read the comics or familiar with Madam Webb's character at all, you knew what was going to happen to Dakota Johnson's character as well. So the story with her as the main character just didn't lend itself to being a full, complete story. And speaking of a full, complete story, the entire movie is a setup. Setup, 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 redo, setup, 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 redo, setup, 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 final fight. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, another negative. The final fight between Ezekiel and the Spider Women, it was awful. It is literally going to go down as one of the worst comic book adaptation movie fight scenes of all time. It was just bad. And it was at that point at the film where I'm going, yeah, this actually kind of looks like an $80 million budget film. It really does. And another negative here is that the whole thing, like I'm watching the movie and I actually had the thought to myself, I had to remind myself what I was actually watching. Something that is part of Marvel, something that's part of the Spider-Verse. But man, it did not feel like it. It felt totally disconnected throughout the majority of the film. Now, they would do things to bring it back in and bring it back home. And oh my gosh, that's Ben Parker. Oh, he's talking about Aunt May. That's the person that he's talking about. Wow, she's about to have Peter. They didn't drop Peter's name. Okay. Moments like that brought me back into it, but for the majority of the film, it felt totally disconnected to the Spider-Verse and Marvel and what they're trying to accomplish. I would say that Marvel needs to stick to the top guns, the main players, stop making these, these side quest movies, if you will, with these side characters. Maybe have maybe a series, maybe something on television, maybe something on a streaming network, but not a movie in the theater, not something on the big screen. They're eventually going to learn their lesson, and it's just the whole thing about superhero movie fatigue. It's actually starting to happen for me. And it's because they continue to give us stories with characters that I just don't really care all that much about. So gone are the days of Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. Let's go. The Win, Iron Man. Those days are gone. And we're getting all the side characters, and things are just in the shape that they're in. It is what it is. For me, overall, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. Now, I know that was a lot of negatives, and people are going to be like, what, 6.5? Yeah, it was just a perfectly mediocre movie. I didn't hate it. I'll never watch it again. And, my youngest daughter enjoyed it. She kind of wished that it was getting a sequel, a part 2, because she thinks that could actually be pretty good. But she also recognizes, my young daughter, recognizes that because the movie's not going to make dollars, it's not going to make sense. And it's just not going to happen because it wasn't good enough to warrant a continuation. It just wasn't. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments what you think about it. As we always say here, we are You Are Echo Based Network. Thank you for watching this review, and we'll see you guys on the next one.